is everybody ready to get started here? Okay, we're gonna get going.
I'm ready.
Madeline said, I am. Okay, all right, here we go. So welcome again. Hi, Shreya. You're the only one with your camera on again. Love that for you. Okay, we're gonna start off talking about college essays today. But first, I want to introduce everyone. Obviously, if you were here last week, you met me. I'm Sara. Madeline, you want to introduce yourself?
Madeline.
Madeline.
Yeah.
But we have some guests today who are awesome volunteers who are going to help out with college essays and make sure that you all get the support that you need. So first we have Nailah.
Hi everyone, my name is Nailah DeBose. I'm a recent graduate of the Rex and Margaret Fortune Early College High School. It's new and it's based in Elk Grove, California. This fall, I will be attending Cal Poly Small as a freshman psychology major.
All right. The next is Bella, who just entered. So Bella, if you're ready, can you introduce yourself? I don't know if she can hear me right now.
Sorry. So, hi, I'm Bella. Sorry, I was late. Is there anything else I'm supposed to say?
Where you're going to be next year and where you went to high school.
Oh, so I just graduated from John F. Kennedy and I'm going to UCSB.
Awesome. All right. Next we have Katy Craigle.
Hi guys, I'm Katy Craigle. I also am a graduate from John F. Kennedy High School, and I am attending the University of Southern California, and I'm majoring in theater. And that's it. That's all I'm supposed to say.
All right, and Cameron.
Hi guys, I'm Cameron. I just graduated from John F. Kennedy, like Sara and Madeline. I'm going to be going to UCSB in the fall, and I'm going to be a bio major.
I thought I was muted for a second. I'm not muted. All right. So yeah, that is everybody. Madeline and I think we forgot to say, or at least I did. I'm going to UCLA next year, and I'm going to major in sociology. Madeline, you are going to.
Oh yeah, I'm going to UC Santa Cruz, and my current major is Education, Democracy, and Justice.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Colette. That's very nice. Okay, we are going to go over the outline for today. So we're going to start off with a shorter presentation than last time. I promise it's going to be shorter. And we're going to go over just the basics of college essays. Then we're going to talk about some specific ones. So we're going to talk about personal insight questions, which are part of the UC application. We're going to talk about long essays, and then we're going to talk about supplemental essays, which are both long and short. After that, we'll have our writing lab, which is going to be really exciting. You'll get some one-on-one support with any of our volunteers here. And finally, we're going to end off today talking about our second mental health tip. So definitely stay tuned for that. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Madeline now.
Awesome. Okay. So we're going to start out with College Essays 101. So what makes college essays unique? So the purpose of these essays is different than your normal academic essay. It's more storytelling versus explanation and characterization versus convincing. So you're trying to show an admissions officer who you are and why you belong at their institution. So essay dues, you want to reflect on values, show, don't tell, and be spontaneous as three big factors. So the first is reflect on values, which means you want to center your essays and find a sense of authenticity. Oh my gosh, I cannot speak. Authenticity and continuity based on certain values that you hold important, which we're going to talk more about in a second. You want to let your unique voice shine through with your essay. And so right now we're going to think about what are your values, and we have a little activity to help you figure out what those are so you can center your essay around them.
Yeah, so, oh my God, the feedback is happening on my end, sorry. So we're gonna do the values exercise right now, which we actually found on a website. So full credit goes to collegeessayguy.com. Yeah, love College Essay Guy. Thank you, Katy, for the round of applause. I'm sure that they appreciate it. So if you want to open the file, Madeline just threw it in the chat. This is going to have a list of different values on here. We're going to give you about 5 minutes to complete this entire exercise. You shouldn't be able to edit it, but I recommend you press file and then make a copy, and then you can do it in your own drive. So that's a really helpful way to do it. You could also download it or print it if that's easier for you. But basically you have access to, I think it's about 50 different values that are, values that a lot of people hold. Things like competence, community, patience, spirituality. And you're basically going to go through and pick your top 10 values. So you can like circle them, you can highlight them, whatever you want to do. Then you're going to go ahead and pick your top 5 and put them on these lines, then your top 3, and then your top 1. This isn't to say that the other values don't matter to you. It's actually just to help you narrow down what you think you would feel comfortable writing about. Excuse me, that would really express what you hold close to your heart. So we are going to give you about 5 minutes to complete this activity, and I will put on some music. Let us know in the chat or otherwise if you have any questions. And yeah, if you want to get started, definitely go ahead.
Yeah, and remember to be honest when you're doing this. It's just for yourself, so there's no right answers, and it's helpful to focus on what you actually value.
Also, we see Lucky Paul has their hand up. Do you want to?
Sarah, do we make our own copy of that Google Docs? Okay.
Yes, so make your own copy or print it, whichever is easier for you, and that should be good.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Oops. There we go. I'm going to put some music now, I promise. it to the 5-minute mark of that activity. So I'm going to stop sharing my sound. Unfortunately, I know everyone was vibing to it, but it's okay. The vibing can wait for later. All right. So hopefully everybody had enough time to be able to narrow down their values to at least the top 5 or the top 3. Would anybody feel comfortable sharing either their top 3 values or their top 1 value?
Sure.
Right. Yay, Colette, go ahead.
My top 3 were compassion, equity, and curiosity.
Awesome. Those definitely suit you. So yeah, definitely a great choice there. Okay. I think Lucky Paul had your hand up. Do you want to share yours?
Yeah. I'll share my top 3 as well. I chose faith, community, and growth.
Awesome. Also great choices. So yeah, this activity is just super helpful to help you narrow down what you think you'd want to write about and what you really hold closest to your heart, which allows you to write more authentic essays, which is exactly what Madeline is about to talk about. What a coincidence. So I'm going to throw it back to Madeline and we're going to move on to the next slide.
Yeah, exactly. So using your values in a show don't tell way is also important, and being able to give examples instead of telling them like, I value communication. You could tell them a story about a time that you used communication and how it really shaped you. And that kind of goes into this next point of show don't tell. So when you want to share, like I said, like an adjective about yourself or give them examples of your personality or life, it's always important to use show don't tell. And so these are some examples. So instead of saying like, I would come up with songs, I would say I would picture melodies and words in my brain that seemed to fit together, or I got nervous at the meeting, versus as I logged into the Zoom meeting, my hands started sweating and my voice got shaky. So you're showing them that you were nervous without telling them. Or I blushed because my teacher noticed my abilities, versus my face turned the same shade of red as the dictionary, knowing that she found my traits worthy of commemorating. I cannot speak. So basically, these are all just examples of how you could show something that happened or a way you felt or something about you. Like you could say, I've always been an ambitious person, or you could say from student government to speech and debate to mathletes, I've always kept busy with my academic passions. So it's about the way you say things while still getting the same message across, because just saying, I'm ambitious or I like communication doesn't really mean anything until you give them examples of how that fits into your life. And then also, this is just kind of similar ideas to what I was saying, but describing setting and sensory details are really important. So describing where you are or how the details of the experience shaped you can help tell a better story and also kind of show what you're about. And reflecting on your experience and demonstrating the impact of your experiences are all part of this package. And then explaining why you enjoy a topic, event, or experience, and conveying a sense of place and the impact on you. So all of these are just parts of what sensory detail and describing, an experience in more detail can do for your essay. And then the last thing is be spontaneous. So don't be afraid to take risks with your topics within reason. You don't want to go too crazy off the wall, like not at all a prompt, but also you can kind of take artistic liberties, and it's never a good idea to just like directly answer the prompt, which is something I had to learn because you're so used to in academic writing being like, this is like my thesis to the prompt and then this is why, but instead it's about like choosing a story from your life that fits the prompt kind of loosely sometimes. And deviating from the normal essay structure can also be cool. You can try unique mediums for your writing. You can showcase unique literary techniques. I know people who made a poem instead of an essay format. So you can kind of use these different ways to be creative as long as you still hit the marks and show them who you are and aren't like too crazy from the structure. So I'll pass it to Sara now for the do nots.
Yes, so I'm going to tell you about some tips to avoid things, because obviously there are a lot of tips as to things you should do, but there are some things that you should still avoid. And just in case you're wondering, I got most of this information from a podcast that's actually hosted by the Yale admissions team. You can find it on Spotify and probably on Apple Music. It's really helpful, and it definitely helps me in writing a lot of my essays. So some do nots are don't be ingenuine and don't focus on other people. And we're going to go a little bit more in depth as to what that means. So don't be ingenuine. Here are some examples. People don't like having an over thesaurist essay. That's just hard to read. Oftentimes it sounds like somebody's not able to say that or speak that way. So you wouldn't want to write like that. You also wouldn't like to talk unlike you would normally. So don't use big words if you don't normally use big words. Obviously, you want to be very particular with your choice of language, but if it's such a big word that it doesn't make sense, then don't put it in there. Don't overuse gimmicks. So one example here is like someone starting to narrate and then saying, and that kid was me. Don't do that. That was a specific example from the podcast that they were like, this is very overused. Don't overuse gimmicks like that. Madeline's still laughing at that because you can just imagine a kid writing that and it being funny to read. Don't include drama for the sake of having drama in there. You don't need to have a dramatic life story to be able to write a good essay. If you have a dramatic life story and you want to talk about like a big moment in your life that was very dramatic for you, then you can include that, but don't include drama just because you want there to be drama. Don't write a resume cover letter either. They're not looking to see how you are academically in your essays. They want to see how you are as a person. That's what your whole like transcript is for. That's like, the resume portion. They just want to hear about you and your personality because they want to be able to gauge you. So instead of doing these things, try to be intentional with your language. Choose diction that is something how you would normally speak, but is also very intentional with its meaning. Speak naturally and appropriately. Don't be trying too hard to sound academic. It will come off very ingenuine. Try to be reasonable and realistic with dramatic events in your life. Don't blow something out of proportion. That would be completely unrealistic. So just keep it how it normally was. And that's a good way to describe something. And ultimately show them your authentic self. They just want to see who you are. They don't want you bragging. They've had enough of students bragging for years. So yes, they just want to see you as an authentic person. Another thing is don't focus on other people. So an example of this would be telling a story that's entirely about someone else. You might really admire someone, but it doesn't mean that you should spend your whole essay just talking about them when it's supposed to be an essay about you. Don't use the comparison, which is also another gimmick. Unlike most people, unless it's something that is extremely unique to you, like unless you have like a rare genetic, like, I don't know, something, variation that really impacted your life in a specific way, or, you've had something that happened that only happens to 1 in a million people. Otherwise, I would avoid saying, any comparison phrases like unlike other people. Don't spend too much time in the past either. They want to hear about you now, so try to avoid that. And don't write about a person's death without explaining how it applies to you. So I actually have an example of how you can write about a person's death and connect it to yourself in one of the essays that we'll share later. So instead of doing these things, you can incorporate others to demonstrate your own character and your growth as a person. You also want to focus on present you. So talk about yourself. That's what the whole essay is about. And finally, talk about someone you admire, but actually connect it back to yourself. Why do you admire them and how has that helped you grow as a person? So things like that, you just want to make sure to bring it back to you because they don't want to hear about your like uncle. They want to hear about you. So yeah, remember that. Okay. Next, Madeline's going to talk about some topics.
Yeah. So as far as brainstorming topics, there's a whole bunch of different topics that your essay could fall under. And you can always, if you have an idea that you really want to go with, a lot of times you can find a prompt to match it. Sometimes it's not the best method, but you can stretch the limits of what you could talk about. But some general ideas are talking about growing up or your passions or shaping experiences, learning moments, character growth, problem solving, academic questions, future plans. And this applies to future plans, but also it kind of applies to all of them. Just like the why. So if you were going to talk about future plans, it'd be like, why do you want to do this with your life? Or why are you applying to our school to pursue this passion? And even with some of the other ones, like, why are you telling this story? Because it like grew your character or because it was a shaping experience for you. So I just wanted to list off a couple of my topics just to show examples of some of these. And one of the things I want to point out that Sara already kind of talked about is that you can sometimes it's about turning something that like is seemingly dull or just like not what you think is like the most important experience of your life into something interesting or showing why it was important to you, even if it wasn't like the biggest experience ever. So it doesn't have to be the most dramatic story of your life to make it a good essay. So for example, I had some kind of weird topics sometimes. I had one essay that was about a frog dissection and how I became vegetarian. And I had another essay about theater, and I talked about this like blue couch at our studio, which is one of the examples we'll talk about later. And I had one about like writing songs, and I talked about the different notebooks that I've written songs in and kind of like whimsical notebooks. And so these are all just examples of things that you can like make that you wouldn't think you necessarily would write an essay about, like a frog dissection, but they can end up making an essay. And I also wrote an essay about the importance of asking questions in relation to my future career as a teacher, or at least what I thought might be my future career. So that's kind of more of like a why reason for future plans. So yeah, anyways, we can go to the next slide. So some brainstorming tips is keep a list of ideas going in your notes app and write small anecdotes and ideas as you think of them. So this can apply to any of the topics. Anything you think could potentially make a good essay, you can write down in your notes.
I literally use this technique, and that's how I wrote my Common App essay, and it's probably my favorite essay. So yeah, definitely helped me a lot to just anytime I had inspiration, just write it down. Okay, we have a question in the chat. Okay. All right. I'm going to talk about this tip, which is super important, is think about the beginning and the end of your essay. You always want to start off your essay on the right foot. This is the area that you get to set the tone for your essay to really help people understand where you're going with it. You also want to end off on a note that brings it full circle. So connect your beginning and your end somehow inside your story. For those of you who do debate, I tell you this all the time. You want your intro to match your outro, so that way it connects. So this is the same thing. You want your intro to match your outro in your essay as well, so that you can bring it full circle for the audience. So I'm also going to talk about what types of essays there are, because this is the part that's really confusing, at least in my opinion. I didn't even know there was so many different types of essays. So there are personal insight questions, aka PIQs. These are 350 words, and they're generally short glimpses into your personality, and you would write like you would speak. So these are supposed to be, a shorter story about yourself. Then there is supplemental essays. These vary in length, but these are supposed to give you more insight, expand, and they diversify you as a student from the other essays that you'll see on the Common App and the Coalition app. The Common App essay, I actually think it's 650 words. I think I misput that in there. These are longer, and it's a more full picture of you, and you can focus on one story or idea, but really like draw out that story. Then we have the Coalition App essay, which is 550 words, and it's very similar to the Common App. Okay, so here's an example of a potential supplemental essay topic. This is a really common one. I know Yale did this. I'm pretty sure Harvard had one like this too. But a lot of like universities will have the question, why do you want to attend this school? So in the case that you do get this question, some tips for you here are to be specific in your to the school. Do your research, because schools can tell if you're being very general or if you're like actually talking about a specific club on their campus, a specific building on their campus. Also be genuine and specific to your own interests and values. So try to, again, reflect on your values, but show how the campus, the school, the university, the academic culture there all connect to your own values. Don't be too general, like I said. Don't discuss only prestige. Oh my God, this is one of the biggest tips that the Yale admissions officers gave, was don't just talk about prestige. They don't care if you like their university because they are a prestigious university. They want you to be able to show them other reasons that you can contribute to the campus or that you would want to attend their campus. Don't go into it blindly. So again, do your research on the school, and definitely don't be inauthentic. You want to be authentic here. You want to show them your personality and how you could relate to being on that college campus. Okay, next we are going to talk about personal insight questions. So I'll pass it back to Madeline.
Yeah, so this one's about how can you best utilize the 350 word essays, because they're kind of a weird length. So some of the prompts, or all of the prompts actually, there's 8 prompts for the UC essays. So it's leadership experience, describe your creative side. These are summed up versions. Your greatest talent / skill, an educational opportunity or educational barrier, biggest challenge, inspiring academic subject, and community development. And then why are you a strong candidate besides what they've seen already? So that one's kind of a little bit more general, and you can apply different things. So some tips about the UC essays are be unique and creative, include sensory details, talk about overcoming and success, and consider word economy. And so it's sometimes harder to minimize your words into a 350 word essay, or you might be too short, but a lot of the times the issue is being too long, or you have something that you like, but it's too long of a thing. And so for UCs, a lot of the times a good method to use is just kind of narrowing it down from something longer or using shorter sentences and more precise word choice. And another note that I just wanted to talk about really quickly is that for the UC essays compared to the common or coalition essay, the common and coalition essay is one where you can dive more into like vulnerabilities and focus less on all your successes or kind of all the things you've done. They care more about that. And UC essays are where they care more about your successes and triumphs. So don't be afraid to brag a little as long as you're not being inauthentic to you or just you're using it in a correct way. And also you can show off your personality with humor and make your stories entertaining or successfully detailed in the UC essays. I think that's a really big thing you can do with these ones because even though they're shorter, you can kind of use a little bit of humor in there to show them your personality. And so now we're going to do a brainstorm activity. So looking at the list of PIQ prompts, brainstorm an essay topic and write on it. We'll give an example after we do the brainstorm activity, I think, but you have 10 minutes and you have all of the prompts in front of you. And we also have a couple guides. So I'm going to put those in the chat. So if you want to look for extra tips, you can. But just kind of use this time to brainstorm ideas that could fit under the different topics. And if you want to write a couple paragraphs on one, that might be helpful.
This is honestly the most helpful thing you could be doing with your essays is just taking the time to like randomly, whenever you have 10 minutes in a day, just write whatever you can on any of these topics. And it's really, really helpful. We're probably going to end up giving you actually 7 minutes because we don't have a whole lot of time today. So we will give you 7 minutes and I will let you all know when the timer is up. If you have any questions or you're like not sure what you're supposed to be doing, definitely let us know. But Madeline gave you like the longer versions of the prompt so that you can actually understand how to start writing on them. So yeah, just try your best. And again, don't forget to include those like sensory details and stuff like that. All right, that has been 10 minutes. Hopefully you were able to use that time wisely and to be able to get some writing done there. Obviously, it's pretty hard not really knowing what to expect with it, but hopefully our next few slides are going to help you out with that. So Madeline, would you like to just kind of talk about it? You don't have to read it, but you could talk about it if you want.
Yeah, so basically this is one of my UC essays. I think it was the last prompt, so it was like, what else makes you a strong candidate for the UCs? And so I used it to show like my values basically through theater because that's something that I've done for a long time. And so I used the image of this couch we had that I was talking about earlier at our studio and how we would talk on the couch and stuff. And then I talked about being in the tech booth and doing lights and how we all like made it through together. And then on the next slide, I just basically connected all of it and talked about how my values of trust, connection, empathy, all helped contribute to our success as a collective. And then understanding those is a lesson that I'll bring to the UC schools. And so that was kind of my way of like connecting different images of something that was important to me and then connecting them to my values in order to fill in that last question. So that's a way you can kind of answer the last prompt and bring in different images if you have different stories you want to tell. Yeah.
So thank you, Madeline. I'm now going to talk about our longer essays that are used at the beginning of the Common app and the beginning of the Coalition app. Again, there are a lot of names and things that we're throwing out here, but hopefully by the end of today, you'll kind of better understand what those are. So we have the Common App essay, which if you are applying to any private schools, you're more than likely going to have to do. The Common App essay is not required by every school, but most schools do require it. It is a 650 word essay on the Common Application website if you're applying through that. And basically there are 7 prompts. You can talk about your background, identity, interest, or talent. You can have a reflection on a challenge. You can talk about questioning or challenging an idea or a belief. You can talk about gratitude, which is actually, I think, a newer one of those topics. I don't remember writing about that. You can talk about personal growth. You can talk about a very captivating intellectual topic that you really like. Or number 7, you can do a writing on the topic of your choice. Obviously, number 7 seems like it would be easy because you could submit anything, but keep in mind that this one is probably one of the harder prompts, just because you have to be able to describe your own. You have to be able to describe your own. What's it called? Prompt. That's the word I'm looking for. You have to basically come up with your own prompt. So you have to be careful with this, not make it too easy, because they're going to pay attention to why you chose what you chose, and how that affects you. Okay, next is the long essay that you would see as sort of supplementals. So they're supplemental essays at schools like Harvard. They have a 700-word essay for the Harvard supplemental, which is technically optional, but definitely something that you should do if you're applying to this college. You would have the option of any of these 10 prompts. So unusual circumstances, travel, living, or working experience, a letter to your future roommate, intellectual experience, the hope that you have for your education, a list of books that you have been reading over the last year. This one's pretty interesting. A demonstration of how you've acted with integrity, how you've contributed to others, what you would do if you had time off, and diversity in your background. Some tips here are you definitely want to expand more in these longer essays. You don't want to be as quick and to the point as you would with, say, the Common App PIQs, because these essays are a lot longer. You have a lot more space. So if you have a story that you were able to fit in 350 words, you would want to be able to fit twice as much content about that same story in the 700-word essay. So definitely expand more. Focus a lot on your intro and outro and connecting those, because it's a long essay. You want to weave that same narrative strategically throughout your speech with your intro and your outro, and little tidbits in between. And you want to have 3 times as many sensory details. I mean, really hark on those sensory details. You want them to feel like you're in the moment with them. Here's an example of my Common App essay, where I actually talked about a hiking trip that was like a hiking and leadership trip that I did for 2 weeks before my junior year, so about 2 years ago. And I started it off by talking a lot about the area around me. So I basically described what it felt like to be in the national park that I was in. And I even included very niche details like mountain chickadees, who sound like cheeseburger, like whenever they call out, sounds like cheeseburger. And that was one of the things that was very unique to that national park. So very important sensory details here. Then when I ended off my essay, my last line is, "And for once I stopped and smelled the roses, or rather the sequoia trees." Again, bringing it back to the national park, which was Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. I was there for that trip. So yeah, that's definitely how I brought it more full circle with this one. Okay, next, Madeline is going to talk about short essays, like short supplementals.
Yeah, so these ones can kind of be the hardest sometimes, the short supplemental essays, because they can be really, really short, and you might have a lot of things to say. I know I always have the problem of writing too much for anything. So like these types of prompts were especially hard, but I think it can be helpful to reuse an essay from something else and just shorten it even more. But that can also get tricky if it needs to be like way shorter and you had a different idea. And yeah, so that can also be helpful for when they're like more open-ended prompts and you want to reuse something. So one example of a short essay example prompt is Harvard's, which is please briefly elaborate on one of your extracurricular activities or work experiences. And it's only 50 to 150 words. So that's a really short amount of words to be able to elaborate on something. And so you can this is less story-based, or if it is story-based, you have to be very precise with how you say it. And it's important to not do all telling, even though you don't have very much room. And so you kind of have to play around with it a lot. And it takes a lot of drafts. And there are also some that are like 100 character limits, like USC's prompts, like the best movie of all time. And you can you have to be creative with the way you fill in those words. And then some tips are narrow down a story to a small chunk, like I was saying before. Still be complete with whatever you're saying. You don't want to leave it as kind of an unanswered question just because you didn't have a lot of room. You have to be very strategic with how you use your words. And then focus on a main idea while still being unique and interesting. So you don't want to just say, my value is communication because you don't have a lot of words. You still want to be able to show that in a way and get to that point, even though you have a smaller amount of room. Okay, and then we have an example from somebody else. Sara, do you want to talk about this one actually?
Yeah, so one of our friends who's actually not here right now wrote this for Yale and she ended up getting in. So basically, this was the prompt that she chose, why Yale? And she had only 125 words. Again, they vary, but these are super short. Like, I don't think you understand how hard these are to write. I spent hours trying to write my short, like, answer questions. So yeah, she definitely brought in some really unique points here. She talked about residential colleges. She talked about Tea Talks, which is like a thing at Yale. She talked about New Haven, which is the place where Yale is located, Yale's Hunger and Homelessness Project, and the New Haven Urban Debate League. So she was able to talk about all of the things that she does and that she values, but was also able to bring it back to the actual campus here. And here's the tips that she actually wrote, which were find things that the university that only the university you are applying to has. Show how you would contribute something to the school and be an appropriate fit, especially with Ivy Leagues. Now, everybody here, not everybody here is going to apply to those, but if you are interested, especially with the Ivy Leagues, you need to be demonstrating to them why you fit at their campus because they're going to choose students. They have a ton of students who are all very academically rigorous, but you have to demonstrate why you stand out and belong on that campus particularly. All right. Finally, I'm going to introduce the writing lab. It is finally practice time, so whip out your pencils, your pens, your pieces of paper. It's time to get writing now. It's going to be really fun. If you already have stuff like typed out, then that's even better. You're going to get some one-on-one support. But here are some tips that we have for you. First, we would just want you to take some risks with your essays. It's really early on in the writing stage. You have all the way until December, which sounds like a long time, but it'll come quick. So don't be afraid right now to take some risks with your essays. Also, be true to yourself and your passions. We talked about being genuine. It's so important if you really want to get your message across. We also want you to consider unique takes on certain prompts, whether that be using a unique literary style, like, maybe you want to write a poem instead of an essay. Maybe that's the best way you can express yourself. Consider those unique takes on certain prompts here. Now, when we are talking about receiving feedback, these are kind of general tips, but also will help you with our writing lab today. In general, you need to find the right help for you. It is really hard to get feedback and oftentimes get like negative feedback because it's part of the writing process. But if you don't have the right person who's helping you, sometimes those tips won't really be helpful. So my biggest thing was finding somebody who shared a similar identity with me because the people I was asking for help from didn't understand my background or my story. So find someone maybe who shares a lot of pieces of your identity. That can help a lot. Also, ask for multiple opinions. Ask your teacher, your parent, your friend, your tutor, but ask multiple people because one person can give you one perspective and another person could interpret it a very different way. Just like with the admissions officers, one might really love your essay, one might be like, not my favorite. So you also want to get multiple opinions and see if you can find a topic that appeals to a lot of people. Take all comments with a grain of salt. Anything that we say, anything that is said by anybody who gives you feedback should be taken with a grain of salt because ultimately these essays are about you. They're about your values. They're your essays. It's what works best for you. I got comments that like from one of my teachers that they were like, I don't like this essay. And I submitted it anyway because I really liked the content. I felt it really reflected my personality and it got me into the school I wanted to get into. So I'm just saying, take risks and don't follow every single thing that people say because sometimes it's not super helpful.
Yeah, and I had my college counselor gave some really helpful advice, and she said, take what edits resonate and throw away the rest for anyone's opinions, kind of like what Sara was saying. So it's all about what edits and advice resonate with you, and you can always write it down now and see if you like it later. And sometimes you will, and sometimes you won't, and whatever it is okay because it's your essay.
For sure. Okay, so here's how today will work. You're going to work independently. So you're going to create some drafts. You can even brainstorm some topics, but you can also ask for feedback. So if you're like, I cannot think of what topics, or you're like, I think this topic could work, but I want to ask for some help, that's where you can go ahead and ask whoever's running your breakout room. And that's going to really help you to just get some feedback and see what direction you want to go in. So yeah, before we go on to the rest of our presentation, we're going to open our breakout rooms. So let me turn back on the music while I do that. Just give me a second here. Okay, we are going to go back to our presentation here. So Madeline, you can take it away.
Cool. Okay. Okay, there it is. Hold on one second to get it out of full screen. Okay. So the last thing we're going to cover is our second mental health tip for you guys as you're writing your essays and doing this part of the college application process and just in general. So our second mental health tip is kind of multiple facets, I guess. But the first thing is be patient when you have writer's block. It's totally normal to have writer's block. You're not always going to feel inspired to write. And so be patient with yourself and don't, give yourself a hard time because you're having writer's block. Also, avoid topics that bring you discomfort. So if something is super vulnerable or uncomfortable for you to write about, or you're just like getting emotional even writing about it, there are times when that can be okay as long as you are present and aware of how you're feeling with it and you are feeling like you are comfortable writing about it. It's just a hard topic to write about. But a lot of times that can mean that it's not a great topic for you to write about because you want to feel comfortable sharing it with anyone you can to get feedback on it. And you also have to keep in mind that this is a complete stranger reading it. And so you don't have to tell like your saddest story in life just because you feel like it'll get you into the college if it's making you uncomfortable. So just be aware of that and your own mental health as you work on this. And then seek out the right people for feedback. Sarah mentioned this earlier, but just don't seek out anyone for feedback that you don't really care about their opinions or you know that they're just going to be hurtful and not actually constructive to your process, because that's not great for your mental health or anything for that matter. Practice self-care during the process. This can come in many forms, which Sarah will talk about, but just make sure you're really taking care of yourself because this is stressful and a lot of work and kind of overwhelming sometimes. And so you have to make sure you're aware of that. And then also just expect many drafts and don't get discouraged. It's totally normal. I was telling my breakout room this. I went through so many drafts and I had like super long drafts, like worst essays I've ever written. I was just like, a bunch of words dumped on a page. And that's totally normal. Don't beat yourself up because you don't have a perfect draft on your first try. That's actually the best way to get through this process is to just write something. And then if it works, you can kind of work with it and try and fix it. And if it doesn't work, then you can completely restart and write something else. And there's no shame in that. And you're going to have to go through a lot of ideas and drafts to get to something that actually works for you. And then also just remember, sorry.
No, keep going.
My last thing was just remember that this is a process about finding the right fit for you and the school. So it's not just about like the school deciding if you are right for them, but make sure you're choosing schools that are right for you and you're writing about them authentically in that way. That's it.
Okay, so I'm just putting that link one more time in the chat. This has a really, really helpful resource, which has a ton of different examples of college essays. We might even add more. So yeah, you can definitely share this with your friends. Again, one thing that shouldn't need to be said, but it might need to be said is don't copy any of these. They have them on file. They can tell if you copied them. It's going to get you in a lot of trouble. So yes, don't copy these essays. But yeah, definitely just like be kind to yourself. And so here are some tips to help you with that. Okay, here's our second action task. So we talked about our first action tasks last week, but these are some tips that will really help you to maintain your own mental health during the college essay season. So the first one is giving yourself rewards for being productive. So even if that productivity means giving yourself time to rest. So even if that means that you had to take a 15-minute break to rest, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. That means that you are very focused and intentional and trying to make sure that you're in the right mindset to be writing. So don't be upset or discouraged because you're like, oh, I need to write, but I just want to rest. Rest. It's good for you. Like, I have nothing against it. Katie loves naps. I love naps. Naps are just the best. So take a nap if you need to. You can give yourself rewards for being productive by, maybe you're like, if I write a couple essays this week, I'll go out with friends on the weekend, or I'll go and get some ice cream with some friends. Or even if it's just like, I'm going to eat my bag of gummy worms after I finish writing this essay. Something like that might help you to just feel more encouraged. So yeah, try that. Another thing you could do is try a calming activity like meditation or yoga. This isn't for everybody, but I will encourage you to try it. If you've never tried yoga or meditation, you think it's like frilly or whatever, trust me, it's actually really helpful. And I think more than anything, it's just moving your body can be really helpful. So go on a walk, you can play a sport, whatever you want to do that will help you just kind of get out of your head and focus on something else for a bit. You can also plan and take your essays in pieces. Don't overwhelm yourself by feeling like you have to write all of your essays in the next few weeks. I didn't finish any of my essays until the day I submitted them. So trust me, they're probably going to feel like they're never done, but eventually you will get it done. Just take it in pieces and, be patient with yourself and with the process. And finally, use a journal to reflect and brainstorm, even if it's your notes app, even if it's a random scrap of paper on your desk. Write down any ideas you have and reflect on anything that you are feeling or that you think would be really nice to include in any essay. So, basically just take care of yourself. We want to see you all succeed, but success can only really happen if you're taking care of yourself as well. So, thank you so much for making it to the end of today. We are basically done with the presentations. Here's my contact info as well as Madeline's. Anybody else who is a volunteer here, you are free to share your info if you want to, you don't have to. And otherwise, we will see everybody here next Thursday at the same time. But stick back if you have any questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here today.